It's great to have you here. My name is Jonathan Bush, and I have the great honor of being the chairman of the board of FreeUp. You're welcome. Frank Laukine is here. Mike Miltenberger is here. Lan Hee Chen flew in to see Governor Chris. Very exciting. And then Ames Brown is also a board member. He's deployed in service to our country, or as Donald Trump says, traveling at government expense. We're all thrilled to have the job of cheering on Ovik and asking you for money. It's the best way I can think of to use up people's willingness to call me back to raise money for this august institution. It can be awkward, of course, but it can be worth it. Just look back at yesterday. I mean, were all of you here? I was electrified from the very first moment all the way to the end. Every panel I sat in, the only time I was frustrated was when I wanted to talk because I was so excited to pick up where they left off. And thank God I didn't talk because they were much better. When I think back to how this started, Ovik pitched me on what sounded like maybe he was starting a sort of a radical sect of Unitarians. You know, we're going to do very careful things, but very hard and aggressively. And so I'm like, really? So if you carry the one on Chapter 19 of the Americans with Anxiety Act, and you can neutralize the tax differential preventing people from dealing with their own anxiety, whew, and you want me to raise money for this? And in fact, it worked out. I leaned in because I was so tired of the whitewashing and the noise-making and the lack of consequential rhetorical structure underneath what we were hearing, that even if it might have been a fool's errand, I was ready to take the errand. And in fact, if you look at the work that Michael and Ovik and their thoughtful team of now 21 fellows, researchers, have done, they have, with this quiet work, hit the American polity with a roar. On higher ed, on COVID, we found ourselves right in the center of and exactly right on issues of national consequence and concern, ready with facts and serious demeanor to deliver them through to political representatives who made use of them, bringing people back to school and several other significant events related directly to our work. And there's so much more today. The trade debate, it's so relevant in this sort of moment we're in, the deep state for grown-ups session on what to do about the administrative state as opposed to the whining and tantruming on the subject. Ukraine, of course. Affirmative action suits, the next wave of them will be covered in panels. And of course, our original sweet spot and Ovik's home base, healthcare prices and underlying costs will all be in breakouts today. And all of them, I'm sure, will give me that same feeling of unabashed enthusiasm for something political in this country in this year. That feeling for me, it's been a while since I've had it, and it's what brings me back to FreeUp. But I remember when I first had it, and it was in New Hampshire. In 1979, I was in a bicycle gang called Bikers for Bush, but I was 10, so I'm not sure that was the first feeling. It was really in 1987 under the iron leadership of a governor named Sununu. And I was living in the basement of a political campaign headquarters at the time, working in a New Hampshire primary where my thoughtful and decent candidate was miles behind a populist thumper of a guy with funny colored hair named Pat Robertson. And I was hoping that the ground game and the thoughtful work that we were laying on would make a difference in what seemed to be a troubling national trend at the time. And so it is a treat to be in a place to be sharing that feeling of unabashed enthusiasm at FreeUp with unabashed enthusiasm for a leader in a polity that has made me a patriot and a passionate optimist, Governor Chris Sununu. Thank you guys very much, Ovik and Chris, for joining us.
I want to go on the record and say I was 13 years old in 1987, so it was not me.
Well, you know, I mean, You're an MIT grad in chemical engineering. Where's your brass rat, by the way?
I don't wear the brass rat. I'm a governor. I'm trying to be anything but pretentious.
We could break out into the MIT fight song, E to the X, DX, DX. But
oh, that's a rare one.
Yeah.
See, I know secant, tangent, cosine, sine, 3.14159. So we used to yell at the Harvard guys, and they had no idea what we were talking about us. We'd get our ass kicked 73-0 in football, but we went home feeling pretty good about ourselves that we knew our trigonometry.
And you actually, I should say for this crowd, you went to the Thomas and Jefferson High School of Science and Technology.
Oh, yeah, you guys actually know what that is, yeah.
TJ.
TJH, SS&T.
And that's maybe we'll get into that a little later, all the drama over at TJ.
Yeah, sure.
But before we actually talk about the awesomeness of New Hampshire and how wicked smart you are,
we'll be here all day.
I gotta take advantage of your insider knowledge about the presidential race. I mean, you're there. You're seeing all these guys and gals coming through town all the time. Tell us what you think about it.
Well, yeah. So look, it is exciting. It actually is. If you're on the ground, and I've been to Iowa a few times as well. Iowa and New Hampshire is really where the conversations are happening. I haven't endorsed anybody, and in that opportunity, I insist that they come with me. You're going to come to the dining. You're going to come to the town hall. You're going to come to the Jeff's living room where he's going to bring in 27 of his friends and they're going to grill you. I spent a whole day with DeSantis, which was very interesting because Ron has a reputation of not being great on the ground, but he actually did very, very well. A lot of time with Christie, all of them, everybody. I call them Super 603 days. I am a believer that if you're really good at the retail politics, right, listening, connecting with people one-on-one, doing what you have to do in places like Iowa and New Hampshire, then that translates to being a good retail manager. And that's something this country has not had in a long time. I mean, I would, without any exaggeration, I would say that George W. Bush was the last time we had a really good retail manager, a governor that understood, okay, I got to connect with what the needs are of the individual and allow that opportunity to happen as opposed to, I'm the president, I have a big idea, so we're going to institute my big idea. No, good Republicans, good conservatives understand it has to happen from the local level, and that's kind of New Hampshire's secret sauce. We have an incredibly high voter turnout. There's a running joke, as people say, in New Hampshire. Are you gonna vote for Ron DeSantis? Well, how do I know? I've only met him twice, right? So like you got to keep coming back. You got to keep coming back. And for the most part, I think the candidates are doing a very good job on the ground. They really are. They've spent a lot of time in Iowa as of late. A lot of them are kind of switching back to New Hampshire a little bit now. I think the debates are impactful. I'll probably endorse someone at some point, down the road, not too far down the road. But endorsements don't matter as much as people think they do, especially in a place like New Hampshire, and my guess is probably somewhat similar for Iowa, because the voters are very engaged, right? They're going to, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm going to talk to them about my issues, about what's impacting my family and mental health and opioids and these things that are really happening on the ground, what's going on in our schools, right? Not just having policy and funding, that's easy. Policy's easy. That's what I try to tell them. My 18-year-old son has great policy ideas. But how do we have a strategy to make it operational, to make it real for you and me and our neighbors, right? That's a fundamental difference in leadership that we haven't seen here. So we're trying to get that out of them. They're all doing very well. Field is narrowing down, as I said it would. We can talk about the Democrat side. Joe Biden won't be the nominee. There you go. I've said it for 3 months. I think the data is finally showing it. Believe me, Joe Biden will not be on the Democrat side.
That's a bold prediction.
It is. Well, it's bold, but every day it's coming more and more true. And that's a real... Republicans have to build that into their calculus and their calculation in terms of where it goes. I'm a big believer that Trump has to win Iowa and New Hampshire, right? Boy, if he loses against anyone in either of those early states, he's toast. The others don't. The others just have to find who the other is, right? Obviously, Nikki and Ron are kind of leading that charge right now. The other ones aren't out of it, but a much tougher path. If you get it down to a one-on-one race with Trump and someone else in the GOP by Super Tuesday, well, now you've got a real chance at moving Trump on in terms of the GOP nomination.
Who's impressed you among the non-Trump Republicans?
I think as of late, I don't think it's surprising to say Nikki Haley's done a great job. I mean, there's no question. She 4 months ago, I thought her campaign was, I won't say dead, but it was kind of stale. It was there. She was kind of running the same speech over and over again. And there's a whole new energy. I was at an event with her the other day where... this is I think a pretty interesting point. Maybe 300 people in the room. She said, how many of you have heard me speak before? And maybe a third of the people had raised their hands. A lot of people had never seen her, maybe only saw her in the debate, but had now come out. So she's got a new energy. DeSantis is hitting the ground well, too. So I think those two are still leading in the pack because they are bringing kind of a new energy. Christie's out there. God bless Chris. He's just throwing bombs, right in Trump's lap. The problem with Chris is he doesn't seem to have much of a ground game in other states, so I'm not sure where that would go. He does well in New Hampshire because he's putting so much time in there. But I don't know where the ground game is there. And then you have Vivek and Tim Scott. Good people, good candidates, but they gotta find their fire, right? They have to light it up. It's not too late for someone to beat Trump in the nomination. Not at all. Most people traditionally don't make up their mind who they're voting for, about half of the voters, until after Thanksgiving. So there's still a lot of time here to play out. And even a third of Trump's voters said they would consider moving to somebody else.
That's like 3 weeks, though. That's not that long from now after Thanksgiving.
They'll start.
Oh, they'll start.
Yeah, they'll start after Thanksgiving, having the family discussions. They'll hear their coworkers. They'll talk about it a little more over Christmas dinner or whatever it is. And then when the candidates really pile in mid-January, our election isn't until end of January sometime. They haven't announced the date, but a lot of opportunity.
We're having a session later today with Brian Hooks, among others, and Brian Hooks at Stand Together has been doing a lot of work on how you leverage independents and others to vote in primaries, the Republicans to vote in primaries who are not traditionally primary voters. Tell us what you're seeing there, because New Hampshire is an interesting place. As an independent, you can vote.
You can vote in the primary.
So tell us about that.
You can walk in on election day, say, I'm going to be Republican for the next 20 minutes, and vote. And so I think Nikki and Chris Christie are going after them the hardest. Because there's no Democrat running, any independent inclined to vote is just going to come out and partake in the Republican primary. I think they will come out much stronger in an anti-Trump way than people anticipate or that you see in the polls. So there's a huge opportunity for who can garner them and go after them. You do it with the Rotary clubs, the chambers of commerce. You're not so much on the Republican side of things, but in that kind of independent local organization and businesses, right? Go tour businesses, visit the factory, shake everybody's hand on the way as they kind of walk out, and not just shake their hand, but ask them questions. Let them give you what they want to see out of you as a candidate. If you come and give speeches, people are going to zone out in New Hampshire. We don't do that. You got to come and give literally a 5-minute talk, open the table up, take the questions, let people feel like they've engaged with you. That's how you earn the independence.
So I want to come back to the topic of Biden not being the nominee. So tell me more about that. Why do you think that is? Because that is.
Well, just look at the polls, right? I mean, everyone's talking about the Times Siena poll. Everyone's talking about Trump can beat Biden in the swing states. The press has it all wrong. That's technically right, but that's not the story of the poll. The story of the poll is actually Haley and DeSantis. They actually polled Haley, DeSantis, and Trump. They all beat Biden in swing states. If Biden isn't the nominee, Trump is actually the only one that loses to another Democrat. He's actually the weakest of the bunch, which is a very interesting stat no one's talking about. And what that showed the Democrat Party, forget the Republicans, it showed the Democrats, holy crap, if we stay with this guy, we're in trouble, right? Because even Trump can beat him. That's what it really says.
But he's not dropping out, at least not of his own accord.
No, so look, I'm a little bit, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I really am not. But this is my conspiracy theory. I think the Bidens, I think Jill and a few others in Biden's team are smart enough to drive this through the primary, get all those delegates, knowing that by this time next summer, I mean, as tough as the president is now, it's just going to get worse. I mean, God bless him. I mean, it really is. His physical health is as bad, if not worse, than his mental health right now. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on there. So 7 months from now, when the convention comes, now the Bidens hold all the delegates, and now they can really be kingmakers. And by stepping off that stage, saying, you know what, I've done my job. I was the guy that got rid of Trump out of this country. I've done my job for the Democrat Party. You're all welcome. I've checked the box. I've been a president. Everyone cheers him. He goes out on top. And Jill and Michelle and a few others, I don't know who, get to effectively pick the next president and tell all their delegates, the time is late. I'm sorry, it's my health. Can't blame me. It's a health thing. Everyone says, okay, we get it. So who we're going with now? Boom, and they pick someone.
Gavin Newsom?
No, Gavin is awful. He's really the worst. He's the second worst governor I've ever worked with. Who's the worst? Cuomo, come on, he's an asshole. Come on.
Hard to beat Cuomo, that's
Come on,
true.
you can't beat Cuomo. Gavin actually tries to be nice. Cuomo would go out of his way to be a dick. I'm sorry, I just, fourth term, I just don't care anymore. No, Gavin is just a terrible governor, and they know he would be actually, even in a short window, he would be vulnerable with the disasters of San Francisco and LA and all that. I think if I were a Democrat strategist, and by the way, I'm probably a great Democrat strategist because I know how to beat me and the Republicans, you'd go with like a Gretchen Whitmer. Right?
She's on the
strong
list.
female governor, maybe Luan Grisham. Well, she's kind of stepped in it a little bit in
She was terrible on COVID. But,
terrible on COVID. But that doesn't matter. People aren't voting on COVID anymore. You know, they're really not. By the way, you can make an argument Trump was terrible on COVID, right? And that's really Trump's problem. If Trump is the nominee, by the way, and you have RFK Jr. in there, I don't know how RFK Jr. does it. He gets a lot of the vote, but he's got to get on the ballot. That's a technical issue no one's really talking about. Getting on the ballot in the general election is actually very difficult to do. Right? No Labels, as the potential third-party group, has been trying to do it for months. They're on maybe 15 ballots. They got a whole bunch to go. So anyway, but if RFK Jr. is on there, three out of 4 votes that go to him come from Trump. Because it's going to be that anti-vaxxing, ultra-conservative kind of free stater, as we call it in New Hampshire, the free stater, almost quasi-anarchist base that hated how the pandemic was managed. Trump will keep telling you how well he did, even though he never got rid of Fauci. He always kept pushing the stuff that group really hated. So they're going to all his base is actually, a lot of his base is going to now gravitate to RFK, and the Democrat wins. So there's a lot of arguments. I know it's a lot of explaining, and that's a bad thing in politics. But there's a lot of pathways where Trump on the ballot just absolutely crushes the Republican ticket. And I care about the presidency. I think you guys do. But believe me, I care much more down ballot. I care about my school boards, which I have Republicans that have lost school board races because they had to keep answering for Trump. I've had congressional candidates lose because they were too tied to Trump. So, and those positions impact our lives even more than a president does, believe it or not. So he doesn't just hurt our chance of winning the presidency, he crushes the entire ballot. I'm pushing the message as hard as I can, and if the Democrats are smart and move Biden off, according to the last poll, that's how they win this thing.
What do you think is the probability that Trump is the nominee on the R side?
65, 70%. Yeah, I mean, it's still very likely he's the nominee. I mean, it's going to be hard for DeSantis or Nikki, and they're the two most probable, to knock him off. But there is a path. There's no doubt there's a path. If I'm going to just pick Nikki or DeSantis, you can pick either one. If either one comes in second place in the first 3 states, everyone else gets out. Trump polls, in the states where the conversation is happening, Trump in Iowa and New Hampshire polls at about 43, 44%. That ain't 50. You know? So that means 50 plus are looking for somebody else. You give them one other choice and everyone galvanizes, Trump loses. And then there's a thing called political momentum. That's a very real thing in politics. They get the media, they get the hype. The media has been saying it's a fait accompli that Trump's going to win, and all of a sudden it's a one-on-one race, and everyone goes, oh my God, wait, we were wrong. It looks like the Republicans are actually galvanizing and doing the right thing. You get all this attention, and now Trump actually has to step on a debate stage, which he is scared to death of, clearly. So all those dynamics change in the favor of the other, whoever the other is. Maybe it's Asa Hutchinson, who knows?
And you think there will be that
I love
consolidation?
Asa. Asa's one of my best friends, but it ain't going to be Asa.
Will everyone but the second place finisher drop out after South Carolina?
No, I hope. I really hope. I don't care who it is. I would get behind anybody but Trump at this point. And it's not a personal thing with me and Trump. It's really not. I'm not anti-Trump. I'm pro-Republican Party. That's the difference here. Republicans are going to lose with him at the ticket. So I just say thank you very much for your service, sir. We agreed on a lot of policy. You didn't get enough of it done for my liking. You can't win in November of 24 for all the reasons I've laid out. I need a winner. And people will talk about also, what is the big issue people are talking about on the ground? It's not the economy. It's not jobs. It's not abortion. It's the issue of 2024 for the Republicans is winning. That's an issue. Winning. What do I have to do to win? Because you can't govern if you don't win. None of this matters if you don't win. We're all crying after the day after the election. Oh, what went wrong? I'm telling you what's about to go wrong. And it's going to go wrong unless we just, again, put our egos aside, maybe accept a candidate that isn't our first choice. That's okay. But if we galvanize behind them and have someone that's inspirational and positive and gets people excited and brings those independents, it can be an absolute wipeout win for Republicans. But we need individually to all have the discipline to rally around that message.
So the theme of this conference is freedom and progress, and it comes from an old Frederick Douglass quote about how he is a member of the Party of Freedom and Progress, which is why he in 1870 was a Republican, and how that vision of what a party should be is not universally there in the GOP of today. But what the thing about New Hampshire that's so interesting is that our friends at Cato rank New Hampshire the #1 freest state in the country. I think it was number
I
one
hadn't
when you
noticed.
got there. Number one now, so you didn't screw it up. Thank you for that. But what's interesting about that is that New Hampshire is on the presidential level a purple state, right?
Yeah.
It's voted.
Sure.
It's voted for Democrats. It's voted for Republicans, even though it is a very free market state in a lot of ways. So tell us about that dynamic and how a guy like you succeeds in that environment. Because I think for a lot of us, that's the model we are trying to build and learn from. Is how do we actually persuade people who are not, down the line conservatives about the value of freedom?
I say, maybe some of you heard me say it, live free or die. It isn't just 4 words on the license plate. It's a super cool motto on the license plate, don't get me wrong. But it's really about individual liberty, economic freedom, low taxes, limited government, local control. And what all that says is you as the individual come first, not the government, right? My secret sauce, if you will, is trying my best to stay true to live free or die, which means even if I don't like what you're doing at a local level, that's your decision. Your planning board has that power. Your school board has that power. I shouldn't be telling your school board what to do. As long as you're not, harming children and all that, that's a whole different story. Even on a curriculum side, the state doesn't dictate curriculum. I don't do state teachers' contracts. So who knows best what your school needs? Your parents, and the parents in that district. And if they don't like what's happening in the school, they go to town meeting the next year and they fire the school board. I mean, it's real accountability at that level. If they don't know what's happening in their town, they go to the town meeting and they fire the selectmen and the planning board. So you have to be responsive. The secret is respecting that control. And now get to the individual, the personal freedoms, right? I didn't get into this game on social issues. I care about social issues, but I'm not a big believer that government is here to solve social issues. I hate wokeism. I hate wokeism. I hate cancel culture. But I don't know a single law that is going to get passed that's going to solve that, right? So let's focus on what we should be doing. Limited government, being super pro-business, because if the economy's doing well, the state's doing well. We don't have sales tax or income tax. The Democrats actually tried. I vetoed it, and then we crushed them in the election. It was wonderful. It's idiots. I literally almost tried to warn them. What are you doing? I'm going to veto this, and then I'm going to beat you into the ground in the campaign, and we did. So by pushing back on the taxes, by creating a very positive business climate, I think we're ranked now 6th lowest business taxes as well in the country, and we did a lot of regulatory reform. We just passed a law, for example, where no matter what your license is in, mechanical license, nursing license, whatever, you now have, as long as it's not some really bizarre thing that we don't have in New Hampshire, we have on day one, complete reciprocity. We're not going to take you through 6-9 months to all that. Complete reciprocity, because that's open business. I want the workforce in the workforce. And that's really if you want to talk about issues of America, workforce is the issue. I don't care if you have the best idea in mental health. I don't care how much you put at it. If you don't have social workers and mental health workers, you're not going to have opportunities for your family. I don't care what you're doing for opioids and treatment and recovery and the fentanyl crisis. If you don't have workers, it ain't going to work. So you need the people behind it. So you have to be a state where businesses and people want to come to. Northeast as a whole is losing population. We're actually the only state gaining population, not by much, but because business is flooding in so much, we've got 30,000 available jobs, far and away the lowest unemployment rate in the country. So, which is a quasi-problem. It's a good problem, but it's a problem.
So how do you fix that? How do you get more workers in? One thing, one of the few things Cato dinged New Hampshire for was exclusionary zoning policies and limited growth in housing supply.
Because it's exclusionary, not because the state does it, because I allow the localities to do it. I have towns that are like, we're not doing workforce housing. I don't care what you tell us what you do. We're not doing it. I can't force them. It's a bad decision. Businesses won't be there. Sometimes you get these old school planning boards that won't change. So I would ding back at Cato and say, yes, the result is they're being exclusionary, but what Cato should love is I'm not forcing big government solutions down onto those localities. So some towns, cities and towns get it, some towns don't. The ones that get it are growing, they're building, they're huge boons of economic opportunity. We're engineers, right? We're MIT guys. We believe in systems and cycles and feedback response. And if something's working, you do more of it. And if it's not, you got to feel a little bit of pain before the town goes, oh, crap, we guess we shouldn't have done that. But you got to let them go through those pains a little bit. Because we allow those mistakes to happen at a small, localized level, very quick accountability, right? We don't have 4 years. I'm the only governor in the country next to Vermont. I have to get elected every 2 years. Everyone else gets a 4-year term. And yeah, by the way, that sucks. But for me, it's wonderful for the state. It's a great system. If I'm doing my job, I can keep it. If not, the people have the ability to have accountability and fire me and get someone else in there that is doing their job. So from an engineer's point of view, it really does work. And so you got to let those pains happen a little bit at a small, localized level, and hopefully the citizens learn from them, and they respond. They show up at town meeting. They show up at the school boards. They push back where they want to see change. And again, I would argue the voters are way smarter than I am. I'm an MIT grad. I'm pretty good at this. But they know that their businesses need, what their town needs, what roads need to be paved. They know the dynamics going on that impact their family a lot more than I do. Respect that. Allow that process. That's, I believe, the best kind of leadership, and the leadership that the country was founded on. I mean, that's what you guys are talking about here. What's really bizarre to me is that everybody in America should be part of this group, right? But we're actually just trying to promote what this country was really founded on, these great, amazing ideals. As we say, the founding fathers were wicked smart, But they got it, a free market of states, a free market of ideas, a free market within cities and towns, even at that local level. Let some towns succeed when they create opportunity, and others towns have to go through the pains when they don't. And that's what government's here for. I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm not here to solve any of your problems. I'm here to create doors of opportunity. Right? For you or your kids or your business, whatever. And then you live free or die. You do you. You pick the door that's best for you and your family or best for you and your business. I'm going to set up as many different options for you, but then you decide which door is best. I'm not going to, too many other, like the blue states, that's the difference between red and blue. Blue states say, here's the door, you go through it, one door, that's it. We'll put all the money and effort there. Red states, and especially New Hampshire, say, here's a lot of different doors, a lot of different variables, because everyone's story is different, everyone's needs are different, so we'll just create opportunities for that and allow a system to be responsive. It's just good engineering is what it is.
New Hampshire is, speaking of that, New Hampshire is one of the states that was hit hard by the opioid crisis. You've been governor during that entire period pretty much. What have you learned about the opioid crisis and how to deal with it? What caused it in the first place?
So a couple things.
How to deal with it?
Well, we can go back to what caused it. Late 90s, I'd say mid-2000s. I became governor in 2016. Around 2005, 6, 7, opioid and driven and heroin-driven deaths, and ultimately we found this thing called fentanyl in around 2012, which is a super high potent version of it. Those deaths kept escalating, and what states have typically done is they kept putting more money and effort into their same old treatment recovery 28-day programs. When I got in there, one thing I'm most proud of is I blew it all up. Can I tell a quick story?
Please.
I'm sorry, So I'm up doing July 4th, 2017. I just become governor. I'm up doing I never do the same 4th of July parade in the same place. I always go to a different town. And I'm up doing this tiny parade way, way up north in New Hampshire. And the parade actually goes from New Hampshire into Vermont. It's kind of corny. And so I'm doing the parade. After the parade, I'm hanging out, and I'm standing there with this mom. She's a single mom. She has 2 young daughters. She just want to come over and say hi and meet me. It was really, really nice. And I was asking, she said, yeah, I live in Vermont, but I work in New Hampshire, I mean, I've been addicted to opioids for like 4 years now, but hey, what are you going to do? And I said, what? And she said, yeah, I've just been going through addiction, but I'm managing. And I went, oh, no, let me help you. Let me get you we have treatment programs, we have recovery programs, let me help you. She said, Governor, all your programs are in Manchester, 200 miles away. Do you expect me to drive down there, definitely lose my job, probably lose my kids? No, I appreciate your wanting to help, but I'll tough it out. And man, that ate at me. It was like a Friday, all weekend. I was going crazy. I couldn't sleep. I'm like, I'll tough it out. What a horrible thing for your own citizens to be feeling like they have to say to themselves because the system isn't there for them. And I realized in that moment what the problem was. And this goes for mental health, opioids. It's what I preach all over to all the governors. Rural access to care. We found out that very next week, the addiction rate in rural New Hampshire was 4 times that of the inner cities. But all the services are in the inner cities, right? So we changed the model. I blew it all up and I said, I'm going to create something called doorways. I'm a marketing guy, so I wanted to brand it as a doorway. And I attached them to hospitals and I got it down to 9 locations. I sat on Google Maps and I kept putting pins in Google Maps myself. This took me to like 4 in the morning one night. I figured no one would do it for me because it was probably a crazy bad idea. I always try to do the crazy ideas myself privately before I bring them to my team.
I can relate to that.
And so I put maps in and I got it to the point where no one would have to drive more than about 40 minutes. And I figured that's a reasonable ask and a reasonable drive for someone after work to go to a recovery program. And I was able to actually attach them pretty closely to 9 hospitals. Because what we also found was that, let's say you overdose. They bring you into the hospital, to the emergency room. They put an IV in you. Within about 4 hours, you're revived. They've Narcaned you. You're revived. You're back. At like 4 in the morning, they would literally, our hospitals would hand you a phone number. Hey, this is a local recovery center down in Manchester. You should give them a call. You should get some help. Good luck. And that's literally what they would say as you walked out the door of the emergency room. Those guys aren't calling a recovery center in Manchester. So I attached the recovery centers, the wraparound transitional housing services, the long-term recovery, the peer-to-peer programs, literally to the emergency rooms. So when you overdose, God forbid if you were to do that, they literally just wait till 8 a.m., the doorway opens up, and they literally warm hand you off to another warm body and say, this is Jeff, he overdosed last night. That's where they're most vulnerable. That's where you can get them. And so by doing that in rural areas, in 2020 and 2021, we were the only state that didn't have an increase in overdose deaths, right? Our numbers had dropped 20, 30%. We didn't have an increase. It went up a little last year. It's back down again this year. The rest of the country is skyrocketing. So this is a problem that's going to go on for a long time, but I'm telling everybody, rural access to care. I created something called recovery-friendly workplaces. I now train hundreds of businesses across the state. If you have an employee that is going through, don't fire them, or that shouldn't be your first reaction. Because nobody can find employees anyways. Nobody wants to get rid of their employees. So here's the recovery centers in the area. Here's how you work with employees. How you keep them employed and be part of their success so you retain a worker and they get healthier. So you got to go, again, it's about the individual, not the government. So we spend a little extra money to design systems that wrap around the individual in their area, in their county, where the services are just of higher quality. They can have work and family to surround them in that time of crisis instead of sending one into the cities. Biden does just the opposite. Biden sends an inordinate amount of your tax dollars to the inner cities, an inordinate amount of all the money to the Democrat-run cities where things are just a complete mess. So rural access, now you transition that to mental health. Where's the mental health crisis? It's with kids. Where are kids? In schools, right? Allow that access. Don't force it, but allow the access to mental health programs in your schools. You have to do it the right way, right? You don't have the mental health office that no teenager is going to walk into the mental health office, right? But we've actually put it into schools where we kind of embed it, within the counselor's office, so to say. And you know what we found? After school, not just that teenager was getting mental health services, his parents would come in, his sister would come in, the family would come in for mental health services after school because there was now an easy to garner access point. So much government waste goes into programs that exist, but you and I don't know about it. Or the people that really need access to those programs don't know about it. It's engineering, right? You got to just keep fighting, pushing on the system to say, how do I create another door? Sometimes it's a little door, but another door. I didn't mean to go on so long, but
great.
I believe the opioid crisis and mental health are the issues of this country. They are the issues right now that people are struggling with. You want to talk about gun violence? It's completely tied to mental health. Not 100%, but more tied to mental health than any other issue. You want to talk about the death rate in children? It's completely tied to overdoses and drugs and suicide. That's all tied together within those issues. And if you start taking care of those issues and driving workforce to those issues in a Republican efficient, government efficient way, a lot of opportunity can come. But just piling more money into the systems ain't going to get it done. That's just pushing harder in the wrong direction.
That's a great note. That's a great anecdote.
I'm very passionate about it.
It's something that we at FreeOp have struggled with. People ask us all the time, "What are you doing about the opioid crisis?" And the challenge is, the federal government just threw $55 billion at it. It's like before you could even come up with a decent recommendation, the money was already out the door, and the problem
in the same old systems.
Yeah,
the same old systems. Too many states are doing it the same. But fentanyl is so different than crack, than marijuana, than all these other drugs. Meth. I mean, we had a huge meth problem in New Hampshire as well. It's a whole different set of recovery. If you've seen people detox off of it, it's very, very different. So you need a whole new system, not completely different, but a new set of skills within your system at least, and different services that wrap around, because it really could be a life of recovery. And you have to appreciate that and design the system to support it.
We have a lot of problems in America. We've highlighted one of them. The federal debt's another one. We've got the state of our politics. What are you most optimistic about America and about the people that you talk to?
I am optimistic. And I've said, how can you be so optimistic? I'm going to give you a story that your cousin gave me. I was sitting in Kennebunkport, and I don't know George W., the former president, incredibly well. He lives in Kennebunkport, so I'll go up and visit him maybe once a year for the last 2 or 3 years, just to pick his brain. And he has invited me up. He sees me on TV or whatever. And he said something, and he said to me, I don't mind bringing into the conversation, he said, boy, you always seem very positive and optimistic out there. He said, I love that. He said, I'm the same way. And we had this conversation, well, why are you optimistic and why am I optimistic? And he said something that I'm just going to dead copy. He said, through all of our challenges in our country, no, this is the way he said it, if I may. He said, when it comes to leadership, assholes come and go, but this country stays strong. And I said, okay, go into that one. And he said, look, let's go all the way back. We had a civil war, and the institutions of this country didn't fail. They stood strong. I mean, the institutions of this country before the Civil War and after still stood the test of time. We went through the World War. We went through the tragedy of 68. I mean, let's go back to 68. I wasn't alive, but you had some of the great voices of America being assassinated in front of our eyes. The Vietnam War raging on. Everyone saying this was the end of America. But the institution stayed strong. Congress still met. The judicial system stood stand. Corruption was minimized. All of it. Even through all those really tough times. You go through the attacks on 9/11. External threats have come. You go through the pandemic, right? Our institutions have stood. You go through whether you agreed with Trump or not, and the divisiveness that we've seen lately, we always come through it. Now, this country, we might not like the policies. We could get more socialist. That would be a disaster. We could get more this, more that. But our institutions are there. And that's what I think, that's right. Our Congress didn't collapse. Our systems didn't fall apart. The states didn't move away from the country. If anything, people are still literally risking life and limb to come into this country. We're still the most desirable place to be in the world because of our institutions. So while we disagree with policy, while we can disagree with leadership, as long as those are holding true and they've gone through amazing tests, we should be optimistic that again, policy can sway one way or the other. Bad leadership can come and go. We've seen a lot of bad leadership in this country that we conveniently forget generations ago and all of that. We've gone through racial divide. We've gone through all of this craziness. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We're amped up because of technology and social media and how we absorb news. We get all amped up that it's, I think, much worse than it really is. But let's have a health. We're all living much longer now. And by the way, we're going to keep living much longer because the advances in sciences and pharmaceuticals and technology and even AI and the fact that we can look at what a protein does at such a more integrated level today than we could just 2 years ago. And we're going to solve all these. I mean, really, a lot of diseases will be solved and cancers will be cured. I mean, that's just an amazing thing. We get to be here today in a beautiful hotel and having, 50 years ago, this was only for the ultra elite. You know what I mean? So overall, the quality of life really has risen at amazing rates in this country. Let's not forget about that. We tend to forget to be grateful and count the blessings that we have and count the generational blessings that even our parents and the opportunities our parents didn't have. Are our kids more spoiled? Yeah. How we consume information more negative? Yeah, I get it. We will learn through that. I'm counting on the next generation who has grown up through technology. Right? I always say social media is the bane of human existence. My generation, we were smart enough to invent this thing, but we sure as hell weren't mature enough to handle it, right? So I'm really counting on that next generation that actually grows up with it to understand it more. Do you know Gen Zs? We can complain about Gen Zs. They're much more apt to want to be anonymous online than we are. That's actually a very smart thing when you think about it, right? Because they don't want to participate. They don't want to be part of that cancel culture nonsense. And like anything, I believe in systems. I believe in cycles, natural cycles. We have our ups, we have our downs, we have good times, we have bad. In some ways we're in a very positive cycle with healthcare and opportunity. I think 32 trillion is, or whatever it is now, is a very real number. I'm a fiscal hawk. That scares the heck out of me. One way or another, probably not for about another 8 years. When Social Security starts to collapse, we're not going to have the will and the strength in Washington, D.C., because they're all a bunch of coward shits. I mean, it drives me crazy. Fire them all, by the way. Just get rid of, I don't care who your senator is. Just get rid of them all. Really, I've said this before too. Take 100 U.S. senators. Let's pretend today we just fired them all. And you replace them with 100 random working adults in America. Is it going to get worse? Right?
That was the Bill Buckley line.
Right? Yeah. I mean, are they going to get less done? No. I mean, the bar has been set so low, and we've actually allowed it to happen where we're used to it. It's awful. That's why I'm a governor. That's why the U.S. Senate is the frickin' B team. It really is. I would never run for the U.S. Senate. So are there senators in here? I don't even know. But you know what? I don't even care.
Not U.S. senators.
I don't really
least.
care. Really, I'm so frustrated. I was going to run for the U.S. Senate because we've let the bar become so low in this town. And that's unfortunate. Now, I think governors, even Democrat governors, tend to do a pretty good job. They have to be accountable 24/7, much more than folks here. So where the power needs to be, where the accountability needs to be back in the states and localities and your planning board and your school board, for the most part, it's still there. So that institution is still very, very strong. And I do believe in this next generation, as screwed up as they are politically, they are more socialist, they believe in big government. As much as a lot of us don't like that, I think time cures a lot of that, right? I mean, you hope generationally that tends to be
Once
the
they start
pattern.
paying taxes.
Once they start paying taxes and having kids and having to decide, oh, where am I going to live? Oh, it ain't New York, right? New York sounded fun at 24, but by 28, you're like, get me the hell out of here. We're going to New Hampshire, right? Now, I want them to leave their politics there and come to New Hampshire, but time and maturity and the pains, right? The stresses of kids, the stresses of taxes, the stresses of trying to own a home and build equity and those things tend to push more discipline and more understanding of the system and all of that. So that's why that's a super long answer of why I really am hopeful in this country. Because our institutions are strong, and they're strongest where they still need to be strong. And if Washington wants to keep screwing up, the Social Security thing is real. I don't want to I'm going way over my time. 8 years from now, and this is the opportunity that a lot of the presidential candidates aren't taking. 8 years from now, there was a 22% cut in Social Security. That's in law, guys. That's happening, right? So I think the candidates should be out there talking about Biden and Trump are saying, we ain't touching Social Security. They don't want to fix your problem, but believe me, there's a huge problem. So at some point, the reality is going to hit home. Maybe it'll just be on like literally the last day before the days before Social Security cuts go into effect, where they're going to have to do something, find some sense of discipline. Because if you don't, we're in real trouble. You have people that truly believe in MMT, modern monetary theory, here in Washington, D.C. By the way, that's awful, in case you didn't get the memo. The idea that debt doesn't matter as long as you can keep printing your own money. No. That has been disproven time and time again. So, you don't have the smartest people here in D.C., but eventually the system will force a better result. But overall, this country is in good shape. I mean, we are as a society and our opportunities. They're there. But groups like this have to keep building, have to keep growing, have to keep pushing the word out in 100 different ways to make sure that we can keep that optimism and keep that hope alive and keep people feeling good about this country instead of all the negativity that we see out there.
Well, that's a great note with which to end. We're going to keep doing our work, and
Awesome.
we appreciate you doing yours, and we'll be cheering you on.
This is great. Thank you, man. This is a lot of fun. And I really mean it. Anything I can do to help, I'm a huge believer in you guys. I'm a huge believer in, quote, the cause. Less government's better government. I mean, that's not just like a tagline. It really does work that way. And I try to make New Hampshire a model of it, right? I'm the governor, and I don't have your solutions to your problems. I don't know what your exact needs are. You're way smarter on your issues than the government is. And I think if we just keep kind of promoting those ideas, it forces the discipline, the fiscal responsibility, and the understanding of the limits of government and power exactly where they need to be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Governor
brother.
Christie.
Yeah, thank you, man.